Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Mavidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om, may the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace. Peace and blessed beneficence be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Tuesday evening reading and discussion of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, a unique spiritual document and testament to the life of the saint, some say incarnation, that through his wife and his other direct disciples founded the Ramakrishna Mata mission, which is responsible for the creation and maintenance of places like this, which is one of many all over the world, and a truly remarkable system of social activity and service in the towns and cities and villages of India, serving the people in literally hundreds of different ways every day of every year since practically since the founding of the Ramakrishna Mata mission by Swami Vivekananda and Swami Brahmananda and Sri Sharada Devi in 1897. So with that, is there anything that anyone would like to bring up, anything at all left over from our earlier readings and discussions that you would like to mention, or from your own wisdom or experience, or any concern or question that you have about anything you've heard as it was read about Sri Ramakrishna and his associates and so on. Anything at all. All right. Do I see Balakrishna there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Who will serve as our reader this evening, I believe.
Yes, sir.
And thank you so very much.
Okay. We are on page 16. The heading is Haladhari.
Please go ahead.
In 1858, there came to Dakshineshwar a cousin of Sri Ramakrishna, Haladhari by name, who was to remain there about 8 years. On account of Sri Ramakrishna's indifferent health, Mathur appointed this man to the office of the priest in the Kali temple. He was a complex character, versed in the letter of the scriptures, but hardly aware of their spirit. He loved to participate in hair-splitting theological discussions, and by the measure of his own erudition, he proceeded to gauge Sri Ramakrishna. An Orthodox Brahmin, he thoroughly disapproved of his cousin's unorthodox actions, but he was not unimpressed by Sri Ramakrishna's purity of life, ecstatic love of God, and yearning for realization. One day, Haladhari upset Sri Ramakrishna with the statement that God is incomprehensible to the human mind. Sri Ramakrishna has described the great moment of doubt when he wondered whether his visions had really misled him. With sobs, I prayed to the mother, "Canst thou have the heart to deceive me like this because I am a fool?" A stream of tears flowed from my eyes. Shortly afterwards, I saw a volume of mist rising from the floor and filling the space before me. In the midst of it, there appeared a face with flowing beard, calm, highly expressive, and fair. Fixing its gaze steadily upon me, it said solemnly, "Remain in Bhavamukha on the threshold of relative consciousness." This it repeated 3 times, and then it gently disappeared.
Now, let's be clear about what's meant here before we go on. It may be explained. Is it explained in the next couple of sentences, Balakrishna? What's meant?
No.
Okay, then this bhava mukha. Bhava means attitude or way of being. Mukha means freedom. Bhava mukha, he was telling him to remain at the borderline between the relative, that is to say, the realm of Maya, time, space, and causation, and the absolute. To remain at that borderline, so to speak, with one foot on either side, so that he could dive into the absolute and take utter refuge there in samadhi, or he could enjoy the company and sport with, as he said, the devotees. As a matter of fact, he once said that the only real great desire that he had was to be king of the devotees. And of course, that's an aspiration from the relative side, a very high aspiration indeed. But nevertheless, there is no aspiration to be had on the other side of the absolute, because there's nothing to aspire to. There is no thing there. There is no thing in the absolute. So this command by this great sage, who was obviously an objectification of the divine presence, it was sent to him to give him this instruction. And so it appeared in this silver gray mist, and then said what it said, which I'll ask Balakrishna to read again now. And then I believe the word Balakrishna read was gently disappeared. Gently. So Balakrishna, read again why Sri Ramakrishna had this vision, what it was he was yearning for, and then describe to us what happened.
What is the meaning of Bhavamukha, you said?
Bhava is attitude or way of being. Mukha is free from attachment and aversion. So that's what's meant by that.
One day, Haladhari upset Sri Ramakrishna with the statement that God is incomprehensible to the human mind. Sri Ramakrishna has described the great moment of doubt when he wondered whether his visions had really misled him. With sobs, I prayed to the mother, "Canst thou have the heart to deceive me like this because I am a fool?" A stream of tears flowed from my eyes. Shortly afterwards, I saw a volume of mist rising from the floor and filling the space before me. In the midst of it, there appeared a face with flowing beard, calm, highly expressive and fair. Fixing its gaze steadily upon me, it said solemnly, "Remain in Bhava Mukha on the threshold of relative consciousness." This it repeated 3 times, and then it gently disappeared in the mist, which itself dissolved. This vision reassured me.
Now, I think there's a glossary at the back of the book. See if the word bhavamukha is defined, just to be sure that I have not misled you about the meaning of the word. See if there's a definition of bhavamukha at the back of the book. It'll be in the glossary.
Yes.
It's in there. It's on
Yes.
1031.
Okay, then you read it, please, Glenn.
Okay. Yeah.
An exalted state of spiritual experience in which the aspirant keeps his mind on the borderline between the absolute and the relative. From this position, he can contemplate the ineffable and attributes of Brahman, or the attributeless Brahman, and also participate in the activities of the relative world, seeing in it the manifestation of God alone.
There we are. So thank you very much, Glenn, for quickly finding that. And so that's the meaning, the full meaning of bhavamukha. And Sri Ramakrishna did, in fact, live in that state for the rest of his life. This happened in 1858. He was at that point, 36, 56. He was at that point 22 years old. So for another 28 years, he lived in that state of bhavamukha, and would go into samadhi and appear sometimes that the samadhi would be so great, so intense, that he would appear to be dead. Only his closest direct disciples could detect the signs that he was not in fact dead, and so would simply just take care of his body until slowly and slowly he would return to it. But then no sooner than he had fully returned to it, and he would be talking, even singing and dancing with his disciples and other visitors. And so this is the state of bhavamukha, where you fully participate in both realms without limitation. That's what I meant by you are free, mukha, free, without limitation.
Shankara,
Yes, dear.
This whatever image, whatever brother Sri Ramakrishna saw, this face, what would you call this entity? You know, God, Ishwar, Divine
He
Mother in a man's
he was,
form, or
yes, I would,
yes.
if I were asked, as I am by you, to say who this was, Mother is responsible for the creation of all beings. And so she created this being, who was probably um, an ever free soul, one of the great sages. It may have been one of the seven sages that are said to be the pillars of the universe. I don't believe it's the figure is that Sri Ramakrishna or anyone else ever identified who this figure was, but I would say it was a creation of the mother uh, for the purpose of delivering this sort of instruction. This is the rishis are such beings, and they are known all over the world. They are not known just in India. They are known in the Andes. They are known in Mexico. They are known in Australia. They're known. Of course, there's always some cultural inflection to what the person sees when they see this, but the basic form and figure of the being is the same. You can find it in the legends and spiritual traditions of all of the great, and of course, these beings exist in the Judeo-Christian tradition. They show up as the prophets, and so this is, yeah, this is a creation of the mother, uh, specifically to deliver this kind of spiritual instruction, it seems. Does that answer the question, Shailesh?
Yes, Brother Shankar. Thank you. Because I do not remember anywhere reading about the explanation of this entity, and you are right that yeah, I mean, nobody tried to explain it. But I think, yeah, you are right. Like it's probably one of the spiritual figures, and it can be anything, like
Yes,
one of
and
the 10, 16,
they appear all through the spiritual literature of India,
Oh, okay, I see.
always described very like what was described here. But as I say, you can find them in the spiritual tradition of Scotland. You can find them in the spiritual tradition of Australia. You can find them in the spiritual tradition of the Andes and of the Mayans and Toltecs and Aztecs of Mexico. This is a familiar figure. This is why the thought arose that it may be one of the seven sages, and that all the seven sages. Some say there are seven. Some say there are 12 sages that appear. And some say there are 7 men and 5 women, 5 masculine figures, 5 female figures. There's all kinds of different legends about this, all kinds of different spiritual traditions about these figures. But they're always there, and they always appear when someone needs profound spiritual instruction. They are a face of the eternal teacher.
Could this be the same thing what we read before? There was, at one time he said there was a sannyasi came out of him with a trident and told him, continue your, meditation. Could it be?
Well, not only that, but he also there was a
Yeah,
tried.
yeah,
He killed the
yes,
dark
yes,
spirit, the Papa Purusha.
yes.
So whether it's the same figure, I don't know. This one isn't holding a trident, and we don't see it's anything like its full figure. We see it only from the chest up, so to speak, as it's described. So it's hard to say, but there are certainly similarities in the intent and instruction given. that time, Sri Ramakrishna was freed of the shadow side of himself, the
Yeah.
Papa Purusha, the dark spirit, the dark soul, and told to remain in meditation. Now he's told not only to remain in meditation, but a specific kind of meditation, this bhavamukha. And this now, this frees Sri Ramakrishna of his doubts that his visions and his experiences were in any way reason for concern. Anything else from anyone about this particular aspect, or anything else that we've been reading or discussing as we come this far in the book? Okay, let's read on, dear.
This vision reassured me. A garbled report of Sri Ramakrishna's failing health, indifference to worldly life, and various abnormal activities reached Kamarpapur and filled the heart of his poor mother with anguish. At her repeated request, he returned to his village for a change of air. But his boyhood friends did not interest him anymore. A divine fever was consuming him. He spent a great part of the day and night in one of the cremation grounds in meditation. The place reminded him of the impermanence of the human body, of the human hopes and achievements. It also reminded him of Kali, the goddess of destruction.
Now, this business about his boyhood friends, the reason that this is mentioned is that when Sri Ramakrishna was a boy, coming up from, say, 7 or 8 years old into his early teens, he was the leader of the boys of his village. He was a great favorite among the women and girls as well, but of course there was a separation of the genders in that orthodox setting. So although the women and girls loved to have him in their company and would invite him to their homes and feed him with the best sweets that they could prepare or buy, and other foods, and enjoy his storytelling and his jokes and his but he was a real leader among those boys, and he led them in all sorts of activities. Sri Ramakrishna was very artistic and creative as a young man, as a boy and young man. You can read about this in the early chapters of the Portrait of Sri Ramakrishna, published under that name in English. The Bengali name is Punti, Punthi, Punti, which means portrait. So Portrait of Sri Ramakrishna, and as I say, it's published in English under that name Punti, but also Portrait of Sri Ramakrishna. It was translated from the Bengali and made into quite readable English by Amrita Salm and some other people, a gentleman named Sen, I don't remember his first name, and so on. But you can read about those boyhood exploits in which he led them in the production of dramas, led them in teaching them how to sculpt and paint, and he sang songs, original songs. He would just make them up on the spot. This is what is meant by his boyhood friends no longer interested him, they felt this and felt as if they were being dismissed, not insulted precisely, because that wasn't possible. Sri Ramakrishna didn't behave in that way, but they were being, so to speak, dismissed from his life, because, as Balakrishna will read again, how he spent his time when he got to Kamarpukur, which also distressed his mother, as we'll see. So please read that again, Balakrishna.
Okay. A garbled report of Sri Ramakrishna's failing health, indifference to worldly life, and various abnormal activities reached Kamarpukur and filled the heart of his poor mother with anguish. At her repeated requests, he returned to his village for a change of air. But his boyhood friends did not interest him anymore. A divine fever was consuming him. He spent a great part of the day and night in one of the cremation grounds in meditation. The place reminded him of the impermanence of the human body, of the human hopes and achievements. It also reminded him of Kali, the goddess of destruction.
Please read on.
The next heading is marriage and after.
Okay, now we can see that Sri Ramakrishna, though he returned to Kamarpukur, as it's put so sweetly and disingenuously, for a change of air, as if this was going to make a big difference in him. This is a traditional way of thinking and speaking in India. You go to some place, you go from somewhere in the lowlands to the hills, like to Darjeeling, for a change of air, with the idea that the change of place and the change of atmosphere will improve things, that the change that is automatic when you make that sort of adventure will improve things. This was what his mother hoped, is that, so now we'll see that just bringing him home didn't seem to have the desired effect, and so something else is contrived by his mother and the family. Any other comments, concerns, or questions before we go on? Anything at all from any of you? All right, please read on, Balakrishna. Marriage and...
Okay. Marriage and after. But in a few months, his health showed improvement and he recovered to some extent his natural buoyancy of spirit. His happy mother was encouraged to think it might be a good time to arrange his marriage. The boy was now 23 years old. A wife would bring him back to earth. And she was delighted when her son welcomed her suggestion. Perhaps he saw in it the finger of God. Sarada Mani, a little girl of 5, lived in the neighboring village of Jairambati. Even at this age, she had been praying to God to make her character as stainless and fragrant as the white tuberose. Looking at the full moon, she would say, "Oh God, there are dark spots even in the moon, but make my character spotless." It was she who was selected as the bride for Sri Ramakrishna.
Now let's go back and tell a little story of her when she was between 2 and 3 years old. Sri Ramakrishna had come back for an earlier visit to Kamarpukur and had gone to a gathering, a spiritual gathering in Jairambati. And among those people who were there was this little girl held in a relative's arms. I don't think it was her mother's arms, but it was an uncle or aunt or someone was holding her and playfully asked her, I think it was an aunt, playfully asked Sardamani, who among all these men here will you marry? Without hesitation, this little girl, 2 to 3 years old, pointed directly at Sri Ramakrishna, and she said, I will marry him. So this, when Sri Ramakrishna saw in this the finger of God, of course, Sri Ramakrishna's assertion was that God alone is the doer. So this had been, so to speak, foreordained. Well, of course it had been foreordained. They were one being in two forms, born in neighboring villages, and this was now going to be fulfilled. And understanding too that Sri Ramakrishna's mother and Sri Ramakrishna himself, it was perfectly natural for an Orthodox Brahmin priest to get married. Sri Ramakrishna had not become a monk. That was much later when he became associated with and took instruction from Totapuri. He had not become a monk, so it was a perfectly natural thing for an Orthodox Brahmin priest at that time to be married. This is how the caste of the high Brahmins would, of course, be. They would have children, and it would continue. And so, of course, Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother, Shardamani, never had any physical children, never had any physical relations. But he had perhaps 100 spiritual children. She had, by the time she left the body in 1920, she had perhaps over 2,000. So they had plenty of children. So this is the little story, the little backstory on Sri Ramakrishna's seeing the finger of God, as it is said, and Sardamani being chosen, this now 5-year-old girl being chosen to be wed to Sri Ramakrishna. Any comments or thoughts or questions from anyone about any of that? All right, dears, please go back a little bit, Balakrishna, and then read on.
Okay. Saradamani, a little girl of 5, lived in the neighboring village of Jairambati. Even at this age, she had been praying to God to make her character as stainless and fragrant as the white tuberose. Looking at the full moon, she would say, "Oh God, there are dark spots even in the moon, but make my character spotless."
Yes, she would say, oh, these were actually her words as translated by Swami Chaitanananda. Oh God, even Uncle Moon, which is how the moon was referred to by the village people of those times. Oh God, even Uncle Moon has blemishes. Make me as pure as a star. Though we know from now our modern telescopy that even the stars have varied surfaces. They don't look that way from here. So she said, "Oh Lord, oh Mother," whoever she was addressing, even Uncle Moon has blemishes. Make me as blameless and pure as a star. Those were her words. Okay, Balakrishna, go ahead.
It was she who was selected as the bride for Sri Ramakrishna. The marriage ceremony was duly performed. Such early marriage in India is in the nature of a betrothal. The marriage being consummated, when the girl attains puberty.
Now,
But-
just to be sure that we understand that this early marriage, this marriage with a 5-year-old girl, is the words are in the nature of a betrothal. It's like an engagement, betrothal, engagement. And in the traditional way of things, the girl would not be physically involved with her husband and produce children until she had reached the age of puberty, or whatever the words are. Balakrishna will read it again.
Yes.
But I didn't want to slide by that. This was not something that should be vexing to us, child marriage, though it has since been eliminated pretty much from Indian, the way things are done in India. So read that again, please, Balakrishna.
The marriage ceremony was duly performed. Such early marriage in India is in the nature of a betrothal. The marriage being consummated when the girl attains puberty. But in this case, the marriage remained forever unconsummated. Sri Ramakrishna lived at Kamarpakur about 1.5 years and then returned to Dakshineshwar.
So now, just to keep the chronology straight, when he gets there, he's 23. He leaves and goes back to Dakshineshwar before he's yet 25. So he lived in Kamarpukur 1.5 years. He meditated in the cremation grounds. He regained his health and his buoyant spirits, as the writer says, and he got married. So anything anyone wishes to say about any of these activities, any question you'd like to ask or comment you'd like to make? Okay, you know why I ask these things. You know why I say these things. We should not go ahead until we're all quite clear about the significance and meaning of what we've already read. So that's why I say and ask these things. It's not to pester you. It's just to give you the opportunity for clarification if any is needed. Okay, please read on, Balakrishna.
Hardly had he crossed the threshold of Kali temple when he found himself again in the whirlwind.
In the whirlwind.
Whirlwind.
Yeah, it's hard to say. In the whirlwind. Okay, please go ahead.
His madness reappeared tenfold. The same meditation and prayer, the same ecstatic moods, the same burning sensation, the same weeping, the same sleeplessness, the same indifference to the body and to the outside world, the same divine delirium.
Divine delirium, and the writer says the madness returned tenfold. Now we need to take this seriously. Sri Ramakrishna behaved in such a way that other people simply did not understand at all what was happening to him. So please read that again from the sentence that has the words tenfold in it, Balakrishna, and we'll hear what it is. This is in the whirlwind. In the whirlwind. Think of the whirlwind. It's a tornado, a hurricane, a typhoon is a whirlwind.
His madness reappeared tenfold. The same meditation and prayer, the same ecstatic moods, the same burning sensation, the same weeping, the same sleeplessness, the same indifference to the body and to the outside world, the same divine delirium. he subjected himself to fresh disciplines in order to eradicate greed and lust, the two great impediments to spiritual progress. With a rupee in one hand and some earth in the other, he would reflect on the comparative value of these two for the realization of God, and finding them equally worthless, he would toss them with equal indifference into the Ganges. Women he regarded as the manifestation of
Hang on for just a minute, Balakrishna. Just so you don't think that Sri Ramakrishna was completely free of concerns and doubts. When he did this the first time, or I don't know whether it was the first time, but when he did it this one time, holding a rupee in one hand and some earth, some dirt in the other hand, and reflecting on the relative usefulness of both the rupee and the dirt for the realization of God, and realizing that they were, as the writer says, equally worthless, he threw the earth and the rupee, the dirt and the rupee, into the Ganga. But at least on one occasion, when he did this, he became quite concerned, actually afraid, that he had offended the goddess Lakshmi by throwing away her money this way, by throwing away the wealth with which he endowed human beings. So, lest we think this was, this whirlwind that he was in was just this bhavamukha, and there weren't these doubts and fears that would appear. This was at least one that did appear when he threw the rupee and some dirt into the Ganga, reflecting on their utility. This is what happened. So it was, in many ways, this was such a torment. Why do these incarnations go through such a torment? So that they can understand, Sri Ramakrishna said this later, so that they can understand what it is that we experience. Of course, they experience it at a much higher level, otherwise it wouldn't trouble them. Tenfold, whirlwind, all these words of intensity. But they are able to understand our misery. Otherwise, the Lord of the universe is at a remove from our suffering. And this is why in Chaitanya's prayer, it says, a drowning man in this world's fearful ocean is thy servant, O sweet one. A drowning man in this world's fearful ocean is thy servant, O sweet one, addressing the divine being. A drowning man in this world's fearful ocean is thy servant, O sweet one. In thy mercy, consider him as dust beneath thy feet. Now, though that's a very humble position to be the dust beneath the incarnation's feet, beneath Govinda's feet, it is far, far preferable to drowning in this world's fearful ocean. And so they need to be reminded. There are instances when you read the Chandi also, where Mother is forcibly reminded by the devotees, by the devas and the sages, that she should be merciful. O Mother, be gracious to us who have bowed to you. So this is the context in which this is significant. Any comments or questions from anyone?
But this is the same thing Krishna tells to Arjuna. I think it's in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. A realized person, takes, of course, he didn't say that throw into this one, but for a realized person, gold and earth are both the same, no value.
Yes. And of course, Sri Ramakrishna knew that verse.
Yes.
He when he says he was a fool, when he said earlier
Yes.
he was quoted as saying he was a fool. What he means is he had not read the scriptures. He had not read the Gita, but he had the remarkable ability from his boyhood of remembering verbatim everything he heard. And of course, he heard the Gita read in many instances by many people, pundits and wandering sadhus and so on, as he was growing up in Kamarpukur. And so he knew all of these verses. And this, of course, as Balakrishna was gesturing toward, this is one of the reasons he did this, to actualize, because, as has been said many times, we don't learn just by hearing the words. We don't learn by just thinking about the words. We learn by acting out what the words tell us. And so Sri Ramakrishna was indeed acting out what, as Balakrishna just pointed out, is mentioned in chapter 4 of the Gita. It's also mentioned in the Upanishads, but of course, the Gita is called the cream of the Upanishads. The equivalence of money and clay, I think, is the word used in the Upanishads. The equivalence of clay and money in terms of their significance, their ability to be useful to you in attaining the vision of God. Anything else from anyone before we go on? All right, dears, please read on, Balakrishna.
Never, even in a dream, did he feel the impulse of lust. And to root out of his mind the idea of caste superiority, he cleaned a pariah's house with his long and neglected hair.
Now, when he says he cleaned a pariah's house, this is an untouchable, and he cleaned the toilet area. This is what's said in the Great Master. He cleaned the toilet area with his hair. This is the lengths to which Sri Ramakrishna would go to act out his renunciation of caste distinction. One of his first direct disciples was the sweeper at Dakshineshwar, the one who cleaned the toilets there. Normally, that kind of person would not be allowed to come near such a one as a priest of the Kali temple. This sweeper was his direct disciple and took the dust of his feet. So this is the euphemism that is used for these people who clean the toilets and do the other unpleasant and unattractive tasks of any community. So his name was Ratsik, the sweeper, and one of the sweepers at the Dakshineshwar temple. Anything else from anyone? All right, Balakrishna, would you read that again, please, so that we further understand its significance?
And to root out of his mind the idea of caste superiority, he cleaned a pariah's house with his long and neglected hair. When he would sit in meditation, birds would perch on his head and peck on his hair for grains of food. Snakes would crawl over his body, and neither would be aware of the other.
Now, how could this be? How could this be that Sri Ramakrishna would sit and the birds would come and peck in his hair for bits of whatever was there that he had, because he'd been using his hair to clean things up with? And as he was sitting for meditation, snakes would crawl across his body. Well, there's an explanation in the life of Ramana Maharshi. Ramana Maharshi used to meditate in a cave, spend days in meditation in a cave on the Arunachala hill. His devotees, who were bringing him food and otherwise supporting him, implored him not to stay there at night, not to stay in that cave and meditate at night, because there were still wild tigers in that area that were, of course, very dangerous in an ordinary circumstance. And when they told Ramana Maharshi that he should not meditate in that cave overnight, that he should take shelter away from the danger of the tigers, he replied simply this: when you do not behave as a man, the tiger will not behave as a tiger. So this explains how Sri Ramakrishna could sit in meditation in this jungle garden, jungly part of the garden that had been used as a burial ground, that was said to be inhabited by ghosts and so on, and also all kinds of wild creatures, including snakes. Now this means cobras and other dangerous snakes. So this is how they could crawl across his body, and as it is said in the text, neither be aware of the other. Any comments or concerns or questions from anyone about what we've just read and heard?
So this is almost, he's in a Nirvikalpa Samadhi, of course, where, even the doctors try to see if he has any movements of any sensations of the eyeball, and they touch the eyeballs and he did not react anything.
No, this was the depth of his samadhi.
Yeah.
He was not behaving as a man. He was apparently a dead person. And this was, so a snake does not trouble itself to menace or bite a dead person. So this is the explanation. How are we doing for time?
We have 7 more minutes.
Okay, please read that little portion again and then read on.
When he would sit in meditation, birds would perch on his head and peck in his hair for grains of food. Snakes would crawl over his body, and neither would be aware of the other. Sleep left him altogether. Day and night, visions flitted before him. He saw the sannyasi who had previously killed the sinner in him again coming out of his body, threatening him with a trident and ordering him to concentrate on God. Or the same sannyasi would visit distant places following a luminous path and bring him reports of what was happening there. Sri Ramakrishna used to say later that in the case of an advanced devotee, the mind itself becomes the guru, living and moving like an embodied being.
Now let's assimilate this. Please read that again. This sannyasin with the trident would come out of him and tell him to concentrate on God. What the reason for this was Sri Ramakrishna would often be, again, this is told more fully in the Great Master, Sardananda's book about Sri Ramakrishna. He would become entranced in visions of the gods lower G. You know, all of these realms, and as it said, the mind becomes like an embodied being and travels here and there. And so he was literally traveling to the realms of the gods, the various, so to speak, levels of heaven. And he would become entranced with what he was seeing there. Of course he would. He was, after all, an embodied human being. He was not yet fully, he had not fully shed his humanity to the point where we see him in the shrine pose, where there's no humanity left in him, only this being who exists in Baba Mukha. So this is why this sannyasin came out of him again, threatened him with the trident, and said, concentrate on God. In other words, don't be involved with the little g gods. Don't be entranced with that realm of time, space, and causation. Go beyond and focus on at least the highest form of God, capital G God, within time, space, and causation, Ishwar or Ishwara or Ishwari. It became Ishwari for Sri Ramakrishna, Kali. So this is what's meant. And then the fact that the mind, as he says, becomes the guru and is like an embodied being. And this is very much mentioned by Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras, that you can manifest a mind, a fully embodied being, outside of your corporeal body. But this is not a spiritual power. This is a psychic power of the human chitta, mind stuff. So it's not a spiritual thing that you can embody this. We hear about astral travel and out-of-body experiences and so on. This is what's being gestured to here. So any comments or questions or concerns about any of that? All right, Balakrishna, please read it again with all of that as context.
Okay.
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
This embodied being, Sri Ramakrishna says that, or it's written that this embodied being comes out as the internal guru comes out, manifests as an embodied being. I'm thinking that it's an internal manifestation of our divinity to guide, because I have read so many places, and we all have come across this, where there are prompts coming from within the inside guru, like Nisargadatta Maharaj says that the inner guru will guide you. And for most of the ordinary people like us, it will be a vision or something, or even an inner voice will speak to you. But in case of advanced souls like Sri Ramakrishna or direct disciples, we see that inner force, that inner voice actually manifests in a form. And I was thinking when you were talking, this is like this person with trident, it appeared. That was that inner guru in case of Sri Ramakrishna. So I was thinking there must be some other examples which this manifested. And now I can think of direct disciples. And direct disciples, they came across all these guidance, human forms, guides, when they were traveling or their life was in danger. Like, I think it was Swami Trigunatitananda. when he was trying to cross a river or water current in Himalayas, and he knew that he had lost it. And suddenly a hand appeared, and he just pulled that hand. Actually, there was someone, he suddenly saw a being appear in front of him, and he just pulled that hand and stepped on where this being was stepping, and he was out of it. And he knew that he was gone. And then I remember recently I was reading a life of a saint who did Narmada Parikrama, which is a circumambulation of river Narmada. And this is like a 3,000 kilometers or I don't know, more than that probably. And same thing happened is that when he was almost submerged in water, something happened and someone appeared and helped him. So these are all extraordinary souls, you know. So I think it's that inner power which is manifested. I feel that as a guru.
No question. And if you read Swami Vivekananda's interpretation and commentary on Raja Yoga, and what he says in the powers section, the 3rd chapter, and what he says then later in the 4th chapter, you see that the aspirant who goes that far becomes omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent, just like the divine being. The only thing that you are not allowed, that it is not allowed to that being that is in that state of omnipotence, omnipresence, and omniscience, is you cannot create or destroy the universe that we share. Your own universe has long since been destroyed, the universe of time, space, and causation as we ordinarily know it. So yes, indeed, these powers are there. And if you wish to understand what is meant by this in full, then read chapters 3 and 4 of Swami Vivekananda's Raja Yoga. And not only that, but he discusses it in the preface and introduction, advising us not to be skeptical, but to approach this with an open mind, to be a scientist about it, as Patanjali was, and a scientist, a true scientist, coming across something they don't understand, does not reject it, but says, I simply don't have the data to understand this yet. And so this is how we should approach what we're hearing about Sri Ramakrishna and this internal, the fact that the mind becomes the guru. This is said to be the 4th grace. Human birth being the 1st grace, yearning for freedom or liberation being the 2nd grace, a qualified teacher being the 3rd grace, and then the 4th grace is this, once you become an advanced spiritual aspirant by following the instructions of your teacher, of the eternal teacher, in whatever form it comes to you, then you will experience this 4th grace of this, and it goes on increasing. Why? We are infinite. We are not finite beings. And Swami Vivekananda says this state of omnipotence, omniscience, and omnipresence that comes as a result of your spiritual practices, and you become Jivan Mukta, a soul that is liberated while in this body. It is the final obstacle to going beyond all this and merging once again in the absolute. These great powers that come to you. And if you want to see some storytelling examples of these great powers, you can watch the Star Wars movies. The Jedi Knights and their opposition, the Dark Lords, are in possession of these powers. And so as we see Yoda fighting, I believe with Darth Vader, I'm not certain, but anyway, they're having this light sword battle, and Yoda suddenly simply disappears his clothing and the sword fall to the floor, and he is simply vanished. The same thing happens with Obi-Wan Kenobi and others of the Jedi Knights as they manifest the power of their spiritual attainments. So, anything at all from anyone before we close up?
Real quick,
Thank you,
brother.
Shailesh.
I found this quote from Patanjali. I can't find where they attribute it to any aphorism, but it says, when you are steadfast in your I can't pronounce this word, abstention of thoughts of harm directed towards yourself or others, all living creatures will cease to feel fear in your presence.
Yes, that's part of the discussion of the yamas. This manifestation of true ahimsa, such as Saint Francis of Assisi and Ramana Maharshi and Sri Ramakrishna. So please read that again, Glenn.
When you are steadfast in your abstention of thoughts of harm directed towards yourself and others, all living creatures will cease to feel fear in your presence.
Yes. So if they feel no fear in your presence, there's no reason for them to react out of fear. So as Ramana Maharshi says, if you do not behave as a man, the tiger doesn't behave as a tiger. When I first read that of Ramana Maharshi, I finally understood the story that is in the Old Testament of Daniel in the lion's den. Daniel's enemies thought to kill him in this cruel way by putting him in a den with lions. They
also,
Hmm?
there are depictions of Christ with all the animals around him. I've
Yes.
always remembered seeing.
Yes. So, but here's Daniel in the lion's den. And I thought, my earlier thought was, well, he prayed to God to protect him. No. When I finally heard this that we've just been discussing, he was completely, he manifested, Daniel, he completely manifested that attribute of ahimsa, harmlessness toward himself and others. And so the lions did not behave as lions. It was not that he prayed for protection and God protected him. No, it was a natural, and of course it confounded his enemies, the ones that put him into this situation. So that'll do it for tonight. So this is such a gratifying way to spend a Tuesday evening discussing these things, reading and discussing these things. I'm so glad that we get together this way, and thank you very much for coming, all of you. And let us celebrate the fact that we are hearing. There could hardly be anything more auspicious to hear than the spiritual journey or sadhana of Sri Ramakrishna, for any number of reasons that we could discuss, but especially because it is so reassuring and inspiring to our hearts. Any final thought, comment, or question from anyone? All right, dears. Thank you to all of you who contributed and to all of you who were silent. Those of you who were silent, as has been said, the spiritual current that runs through our unity, we feel your presence, even if you don't say a word. Your heart is speaking to us, and ours is speaking to yours, though we may say words on top of that. Our heart is speaking to yours. So Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. Durga, Durga, Durga. May we be safe. May we be healthy. May we be cheerful. May we have peace of mind. May we know we are always in the loving and protective embrace of the Divine Being as our Mother and Father. Om Hari Om Tat Sat. Om, dearly beloved, make it so. Om Asatoma Satkamaya. Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya. Mrityorma Amrutangamaya. Abir Moiti. O Lord, hear this prayer from our hearts. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from this realm of endless noise and relentless deception to thine abode of silence, serenity, clarity, and peace. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from darkness and ignorance to the brilliance of thy wisdom and love. Lead us from death to immortality. Light us through and through, light us through and through with thy everlasting, shining presence. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, 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 and blessed beneficence be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Hari Om Tat Sat. Dearly beloved, make it so. Any final thought or comment from anyone? All right, dears. If you choose to join us tomorrow night, we'll study that infamous Bhagavad Gita. We're well along and having a romping good time hearing what Sri Krishna tells Arjuna and how he upbraids him for not wanting to fight and telling him why it's obligatory that he fight the battle of the world. It's again inspiring and ennobling. Hari Om Tat Sat. Good night, everyone.